You know that feeling, right? You decide you're going to learn to code, and the excitement is just absolutely through the roof. You watch a few motivational videos, you sketch out these grand plans, and you start vividly imagining yourself landing that ultimate dream job. For the first few days, everything feels incredible. The code is flowing, the concepts actually make sense, and you feel completely unstoppable. But then, almost out of nowhere, bam, the drop-off hits. Your motivation just evaporates. You stop coding, you start actively avoiding your projects, and suddenly just the mere thought of cracking open your laptop starts feeling incredibly exhausting. If this cycle keeps happening too, listen to me right now. You are absolutely not alone. It's a hard truth, but it's such an important one. When opening that laptop suddenly feels like lifting a massive boulder, it's not because you aren't cut out for programming. It's because you're relying on a fuel source that is literally designed to burn out quickly. So, that brings us to the big question, doesn't it? Why does motivation actually die? Well, in this explainer, we're going to break down the unfiltered, real reasons why your coding motivation vanishes. And more importantly, how you can stay relentlessly consistent even when that motivation is totally gone. Let's kick things off with Section 1, the motivation illusion, and why you cannot depend on hype. Here's the secret nobody tells beginners. That early motivation, it's basically a trick your brain plays on you, running purely on temporary hype. You get fired up by an inspiring success story or just the sheer thrill of a new beginning. But eventually, the honeymoon phase ends, and the gritty reality of coding hits you right in the face. Bugs appear completely out of nowhere and ruin your entire afternoon. Concepts that seemed easy suddenly become deeply confusing. Projects that worked perfectly yesterday, they stop working today for no obvious reason. Reality completely shatters that initial excitement, and your motivation just vanishes into thin air. Which leads us to a massive mindset shift. The developers who actually make it in this industry are not walking around hyped up 24/7. That's a total myth. They succeed because they simply keep typing even when they absolutely do not feel like coding. They push right through the friction. All right, moving to our second point, Section 2, unrealistic expectations, and the infamous 3-month myth. So many people jump in thinking, hey, if I just grind intensely for 3 months, I'll be totally job ready. But let's be real. Software engineering takes deep, deep patience. Real growth isn't a straight line going up. It involves heavy doses of confusion, endless repetition, failure, deep debugging, and just constant practice. Whether you're diving into React, building out a backend, wrapping your head around complex AI systems, or tackling data structures and algorithms, navigating these gritty, frustrating steps is mandatory. And when you mix those crazy expectations with how mentally tough programming actually is, you get pure exhaustion. You might feel like your progress is way too slow, so you push yourself into this extreme grind, studying for grueling hours without taking a breather. But the real problem isn't your speed at all. It's expecting an unrealistic timeline. Consistency is always going to matter more than pushing yourself to the brink of mental exhaustion. Which brings us perfectly to our third pitfall. Section 3, the tutorial trap. Why watching simply isn't building. Watching tutorials feels amazing, doesn't it? You feel so productive. But watching someone else code is not the same as doing it yourself. When you lean too hard on the false security of endless videos, you eventually go to build something alone and you just freeze. You're completely paralyzed. You realize you can't do much without someone holding your hand, and that destroys your confidence. Genuine confidence doesn't come from watching a screen. It comes from struggling independently, fixing your own nasty bugs, and figuring things out yourself. And speaking of traps, we've got to talk about the chaos of switching paths. There are just so many shiny objects today: mobile, blockchain, cloud computing. Month 1, you're all in on front end. Month 2, you pivot to AI. By month 3, you're dabbling in cybersecurity. Constantly jumping around like this doesn't make you a well-rounded developer. It just creates chaos. Your growth skyrockets when you actually sit down and focus deeply on one single direction first. Now, let's talk about the outside world. Section 4, the danger of comparison, social media versus reality. Social media is probably the biggest motivation killer out there. You log on and see massive salary brags, teenagers who are somehow AI startup founders, and an endless stream of "how I cracked Google" videos. Naturally, you start feeling like you're hopelessly behind. But comparison is a rigged game because you're completely ignoring all the unseen variables. Every single person has an entirely different background, different access to opportunities, totally different learning speeds, and vastly different financial situations. We're all starting from a completely different starting line. You have to remember this.
You are literally watching someone else's highlight reel, not their bloopers. You aren't seeing the days they spent crying over a broken codebase or the hundreds of brutal rejections they got before that one acceptance letter. Comparing your messy behind the scenes to their polished final product is a guaranteed, foolproof way to kill your motivation.
So, how do we actually fix this? That's section 5, overcoming the fear of failure and learning to embrace broken projects. A lot of beginners secretly dodge building their own projects, applying for internships, or posting their work on GitHub simply because failing feels deeply embarrassing. But we need to reframe what failure actually means. Failure is literal proof that you are learning. It is definitely not proof that you're bad at coding. Seriously, every strong senior developer out there has an absolute graveyard of broken projects. Failure isn't a bug, it's a mandatory feature of becoming a great developer.
All right, let's dive into our final and honestly most crucial concept. Section 6, discipline beats motivation, the ultimate mindset shift.
Motivation is just a feeling, right? And feelings vanish. But discipline, that's an action. And it's the exact thing that builds long-term success. And here's what discipline actually looks like. It does not mean grinding for 12 hours a day until your eyes cross. It means an incredibly simple, boring commitment. 1 hour daily, consistently, for 1 year. That single, focused habit will completely and utterly transform your skills.
When you stack them up side by side, it's not even a contest. Tiny, consistent daily progress is a real game changer compared to the total unreliability of random motivational bursts. You can't put a motivation burst on your calendar, but you sure can schedule 1 hour of practice every single day.
So I really want to reassure you right now. If you're sitting there feeling confused, demotivated, lost, or just completely frustrated, that does not mean you aren't smart enough. It doesn't mean programming is impossible for you. What you're feeling is just the normal, everyday reality of learning a really tough skill. Literally every successful developer has felt those exact same emotions. The literal only difference, the one single thing separating them from the folks who threw in the towel, is that they kept going anyway. They didn't rely on raw talent, and they definitely didn't sit around waiting for motivation to magically return. They just stayed consistent. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought to chew on. Are you going to keep waiting for that perfect wave of motivation to strike, or are you just going to start building? Your future as a developer depends entirely on what you do on the days you really don't want to code. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you got something out of this explainer and want to dive deeper into software engineering, AI, and real developer growth, make sure to hit subscribe. Now, go open that laptop. I'll see you in the next one.